just been handed an urgent news story.
Cannon.
It's on the radio.
Step back.
We have the wonderful guests represented this day with us, and that of Ardis Watkins, the Executive Director of the State Employees Association of North Carolina, along with the Chief Financial Officer, Brenda Brown, also with the same entity. I'm so glad to have them here with us this day. And listeners, you heard me make mention of a moment ago about the State Employees Association of North Carolina, but you're like, okay, I hear that, but what is the State Employees Association of North Carolina? So with that, I'd like to bring up Ardis, and as Executive Director, and Ardis, we'd love to have you to give some background, if you would please, to the listeners about the State Employees Association of North Carolina, who it is, what it is rather, and what you all do there.
Sure. The State Employees Association of North Carolina we're a labor organization. We've been around for about 76 years, and we're made up of state agency employees, university, community college, public schools, everybody who's a state employee, who's in the state health plan, the state retirement plan, who's doing the work of the public. That's who makes up our membership. And then the retired state employees are part of our membership as well. We've got about 46,000. It's voluntary membership. But again, we've been around for 76 years. And every year, the challenge for us is to try going down to the legislature knowing that the numbers we're asking for are big because there's a lot of employees to take care of the needs of this state, that we've got to get those big numbers, even though we're having to battle big business lobby to get it done. That's who we are.
You said you have to battle big business?
Yeah, well, the main lobbyists downtown that are going to be battling for anything are healthcare, industry, real estate, folks who have an awful lot of money. State employees don't. What we have is numbers, and we have education. We have good people like you who let us get on your airwaves and spread the message for state employees.
Well, thank you for that. I don't mind doing it at all. We have to make sure that we are astute and aware of the things that are going on within the state, who's doing it on our behalf, and how they are being protected and or looked after, if you will. And I think for a long time, there seems to be a struggle about what's going on with state employees and what's happening there. And it sounds like in your capacity, you're there to be that advocate for those employees, for the association in terms of what their needs may be. Correct or incorrect?
Well, that's correct. That's exactly what we're here to do.
Well, and of course, Brenda Brown has been someone that's worked for the state. You've been engaged on and being a part of what goes on within that sphere, right? So experience-wise, you'll be able to speak to some of that this morning, I hope, because I do want to come to you and talk to you a little bit about that.
Yes, I have. I worked with the state for a little over 11 years, just came to SEANC as their CFO just over a year ago.
Talk to the listeners, talk to me, us, about what's happening presently with state employees and what's going on. Are you being heard? Are people being looked after, if you will, by the legislature here in North Carolina?
I think it's always an uphill battle for state employees and the legislature. Again, to give decent raises costs a lot of money. And that means making a big decision that the priority will be those public employees, those public servants. And it's a hard decision to make. But right now, we feel like that decision should be a lot easier because there's a crisis. 23% of state jobs are vacant. So that means you as a taxpayer, you're still paying 100% taxes, but you're getting 77% services for it. 23% vacant, but here's what's worse. 37% of people who come to work for the state leave in the first year. That's a problem. The state used to be somewhere that you came, you knew you wouldn't make as much as the private sector, but the benefits would be pretty good. And it would be a decent living. You wouldn't get rich, but you could take care of your family. And people don't feel that way now. They're leaving. And the problem there is that leaves the public without services. And when they do have services, people who are overworked doing them, and in some cases might not be as qualified as they should be because we need a body. The message across the board is pay. Pay among public employees is about 14.9% less than the private sector. And again, that would be okay if the benefits were so outstanding they made up for it. And retirees, you used to know if you were going to retire from the state, you get a little bump every year. And that would, a cost of living, well, COLA as we call it, and that would make it all right. Because if you got that little bump, that was something worth waiting for. You knew you wouldn't make as much while you were working, but you would be taken care of. That's not happened in years. So there's nothing for young people looking at the state to feel encouraged about.
Don't we hear it often about teacher pay, but it's everybody pay, sounds like, about right now with the state.
Yeah.
And it used to be that people would say, you know what, because I'm listening to you speak, and it was a situation where someone would say, it's not the best pay, but you can't beat the benefits. Now it sounds like, well, you're not getting the pay, and the benefits have lessened as well. And so that's not a good trade-off, because sometimes people will take either or. Sometimes it's the greater pay over the least amount of benefits sometimes, right? So what now is the legislature doing, or what are you all asking to be done, if you will?
We're asking for a 5% raise this year and a 5% raise next year and $5,000 bonus over the next year spread out, retention bonus for everybody. That's public agencies, universities, community colleges, anybody working inside a public school. We need to keep all of the employees. You mentioned teachers, that's definitely a need. Everybody else that works in the school building is critical. The folks at the Department of Agriculture, you can't slaughter an animal without a state inspector being present. So we literally have less food going to the shelves because we don't have enough state employees, and most people don't even make that connection. I think half the people blame Joe Biden for less meat being on the shelf. We don't have enough state inspectors. We've had a forest fire raging for 5 weeks in this state. We have 80% of those jobs for forest firefighters filled, and they're fighting that thing. What if we had another one start? Those are the kind of things that are happening. And then, of course, there's DMV. I know Brenda just had a DMV store.
Yes, of course, I recently got married and had to go down to DMV and change over my driver's license. But I started first going online to see if I could make an appointment. The appointments were booking 3 months out. So I thought I'd take my chances and get in line at the DMV. And first of all, shout out to the employees of the DMV at Spring Forest Road in Raleigh. And the gentleman came out, long line. I had to get in there at 6:30 in the morning just to get in line. And the gentleman came out so apologetic, so professional and courteous to say, I'm sorry, you all, we're short-staffed. There's no way I'll get to all of you. And I thought, how many times is this man going to get yelled at today alone for something completely out of his control? And so, I think about the toll of people leaving state jobs, but the people who are left behind to do the work of 2 and 3 people. And the toll is even more than just the dollar cost. It's the physical and emotional toll on those who stay.
We have the wonderful guests represented this day with us, and that of Ardis Watkins, the Executive Director of the State Employees Association of North Carolina, along with the Chief Financial Officer, Brenda Brown, also with the same entity. And so let me just see if someone here has a comment. Welcome to At the Table.
This is Ronald Alexander. How you doing, Patrick Cannon?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Alexander. What's your comment, please, or question?
I just want to say, what? With this being the United States of America, it's a doggone shame how state employees and teachers are treated. It's a shame. I guess it is an embarrassment. It really is.
Well, Mr. Alexander, that's why it's fair to say, from my perspective, we have to be articulating that to the legislature, right? We need to be talking to the delegations in the various counties represented in the 100 counties here in North Carolina. So that being said, one, let me thank you for your call, and I want to defer back to the ladies with regard to the comment you just made. Okay, Mr. Alexander, and thank you so much for your call. We appreciate you.
You too, bro.
All right, bye now. Ladies, what about that comment?
Well, first of all, it's appreciated very much on behalf of our members. But secondly, it's what we're hearing all over the place. I think there's a misperception among some politicians. I think they believe that it's popular to say, save money, don't spend much on public employees, all the jokes about public employees not doing much, all that kind of mess. I think that that's really popular among politicians, but it's not reality. If you get out in the streets and you talk to people, you find out they want public employees to be paid properly because they want public services. They want the people who are determining if they have clean water to know what they're doing, or driving their kids in a school bus. And so we appreciate what he said. What I would encourage everybody to do is understand the power of their voice, because That's what we urge our members to do. We had our members place 2,000 phone calls to the legislature last week. You would not believe the power of those phone calls. And you don't have to know where to call. You can just go, there's a website, www.ncleg.net, and that's the legislature's website. And you can look up who your representative or senator is and, figure out how to be put through to them.
Folks, you got that. I was just about to ask, okay, what's the best way to try to communicate to some of these folks? But you just heard it right there from, of course, Ardis Watkins. Good people, look, don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back on the other side, so hang tough, all right?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story.
Cannon.
It's on the radio.
Step back.
You're worth 100%, good people. You are worth 100%. And yet, what we're hearing this morning is that you're not getting it because those positions are not able to be filled. We want to find a way to join the efforts of what's happening with the State Employee Association of North Carolina to aid them, to aid us in our quest, their quest, create a better opportunity. So let me just delve back over a little bit. And Brenda, I want to segue over to you to talk about your personal experience, because you, before being where you are today with the State Employees Association of North Carolina, happened to be a state employee. What was your experience there?
Yeah, so I was in senior management almost a decade in state government, and especially in the last several years, what I saw, the frustration I experienced along with my team of supervisors, is we would recruit and hire great talent from across the state, only to turn around and lose them. Again, our salaries were just not competitive, and sometimes they were leaving just to go to another state agency because that's the only way they could get higher pay. Mm-hmm. And so not only losing them, to the private sector, losing them to other agencies. So the churn was constant. We were recruiting, hiring, training, investing significant manpower in training these people, only to lose them months later or a year or so later, and to start the process all over again.
Wow. Well, at this juncture, I want to tie in a little bit just to make sure we're bringing clarity to this. Right now, we see public safety being a major issue across the state, across the country. So, Executive Director Watkins, talk a little bit about really the importance of that area and what's needed and why we still need to be focused on what we need to be focused on.
Sure. I mean, when we think public safety, we usually think law enforcement. And there are issues with staffing for law enforcement, but in state government, what we generally think of first is the prisons. Our prisons are actually at an excess, they're over 50% vacancy rate. So if you can imagine, for someone working there, for someone who has to be there for any reason, that's an unsafe situation. And not that many years ago, we saw the murders of 4 correctional officers when a prison was at 33% vacancy. Mm-hmm. So we're playing a dangerous game here, and it's going to end badly eventually. So there's that issue. Probation, parole officers, we don't have enough of those. Those are the traditional things people think of. But here's where public safety, I think people don't think of it, but they should. When you step into an elevator, that elevator's been inspected by a Department of Labor, State Department of Labor employee. We can't keep elevator inspectors because the pay isn't high enough. And the Commissioner of Labor has been begging to get that addressed. If you've got a vulnerable loved one who needs a bed in one of what they call the DSOF, one of the hospital's DHHS runs, we're closing beds. We can't keep the beds open because we don't have enough employees to staff the hospitals. That is a true public safety issue. And that ties into the mental health issues as well. One of the biggest areas where we have vacancies is bridge inspectors for DOT. Now, I don't know about you, but when I drive across a bridge, I surely want to think somebody has looked at that thing recently. And the other things that are being delayed because we don't have enough people are autopsies So when people are going through the worst time of their life, they want to know what happened to their loved one. Well, we have those bodies actually sitting in a parking lot here in Raleigh in some refrigerated trucks, waiting for the staff that are working overtime to try to be able to get to them. When a mom and dad have a baby, the newborn testing's delayed right now. If an animal might be rabid and it bit somebody, we can't turn that test around immediately like we used to. Those are the kind of things that I mean when I am talking about public safety and things the public might not think about.
Well, in closing, what's the takeaway that you've said a mouthful right there? That could be the takeaway right there, and we just end this whole subject matter. But in terms of the need of where advocacy is important and where you need some level of assistance, what might that look like? What would you all say to the general public right now in terms of how they may be able to assist in this matter where funding is a real issue and not being instituted as it should be, it sounds like, on the state level by its leadership, political leadership?
Again, to call the legislature, email the legislature, go to that website, www.ncleg.net. But the message we would love for them to give is that it is more expensive to lose these public employees than it is to keep them. And Brenda, if we have 2 seconds, Brenda can explain that.
Yeah, so I talked about just that process of having to recruit and train and lose individuals, but that has a financial toll, a cost as well. And so Ardis mentioned about the people who are left behind who have to work overtime. It's estimated about $500 million it's costing us to lose and recruit and have to rehire these individuals, filling these positions over and over. And $500 million is just the lowest end of the estimation. Deloitte estimates that it could be as high as $2 billion. So it is a true financial cost to have all of these vacancies and constant turnover, that it'd be a whole lot less expensive to pay people what they deserved and to retain them in the first place.
Folks, I hope you're hearing that. That's big news. That's major information. So we need to take that and not sleep on this. Again, please take the advice of Executive Director Ardis Watkins, and that is to check that website out, www.ncleg.net. Okay? Y'all got that? ncleg.net. Find out who your representatives happen to be, if you don't know already. If you know already, go ahead and give them a call, shoot them an email, and let them know, hey, we need your support yesterday in providing proper funding, advocating for, state employees to be able to be paid, hired, and receiving the best benefits possible, because it's needed. It's cheaper. You just heard it's cheaper to go ahead and to do it that way than currently what's existing. Ladies, thank you so much for being here this day. We hope you'll come back, keep us updated, let us know what's happening where. Will you please do that?
Absolutely.
We sure will. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You're so welcome, and thank you all. Folks, once again, Executive Director of the State Employees Association of North Carolina, along with Chief Financial Officer Brenda Williams Brown. So glad to have them here with us this day, and we look forward to have them to keep us updated along the way.